Let me welcome you to the conversation segment on the Signature Show on Africa Independent Television AIT. My guest for today is no other person than J.S Okutepa, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. You're welcome, Okutepa.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Very quickly, the former Speaker of Imo State House of Assembly, Right Honorable D.K. Dikocha, has faulted the Supreme Court for saying that anti-graft agencies should not look into the finances of the state. He says that the Supreme Court position is a recipient for corruption. What is your take on that?
First, let me correct these very erroneous impressions being circulated on social media. There is no judgment of Supreme Court, except that which is yet to be delivered, that had ever said that the anti-corruption agencies, particularly EFCC, ICPC, should not look into the activities or corruption or corrupt activities of either local government, state governments, or even private individuals. No such judgment exists. And the judgment that is being branded and quoted out of context on social media was delivered in the case of Mobike SAN versus Federal Republic of Nigeria. No such issues was discussed. What the Supreme Court said in that case was that the anti-graft agency did not have the power to investigate the allegation of perversion of justice leveled against the learned senior advocate of Nigeria. So soon thereafter, and these are part of the corruption in this country, the social media was awash with snippets and excerpts said to have come from the Supreme Court, that the Supreme Court bar the EFCC or anti-graft agencies from investigating the accounts of state governments. There is no such things. Rather, on the contrary, very many judgments of the Supreme Court exist to the effect that the anti-corruption agencies have the statutory and constitutional duty to investigate and eradicate corruption, beginning from the case of Attorney General of Ondo State versus Attorney General of the Federation, where the legality of ICPC was brought before the Supreme Court for determination. And the Supreme Court, quoting the provisions of our Constitution, particularly Section 15, that put a burden on the federal government, on the state to eradicate corruption, that the Anti-Corruption ICPC Act was constitutional. The same thing, EFCC had its power and authority challenged a number of cases, including Ibrahim Shehu Shema and the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Jolin Yame and Federal Republic of Nigeria, Joshua Darie and Federal Republic of Nigeria. And in all of these things, the Supreme Court is unanimous that EFCC can open the book of any government functionaries, and not only that, not only limiting itself to federally created offenses. If you look at the EFCC Act, it makes EFCC a coordinating agency for corruption cases, and they have the power to prosecute people that are found to be corrupt under either penal code, other criminal code, or other such laws of the states. You may recall that the Lagos state government attempted at a point in time to promulgate what they call their own anti-corruption law. But when you look at the provisions of our Constitution, question may be asked whether indeed the law pertaining to corruption in Nigeria, which organ of government, is it the National Assembly or the State Houses of Assembly that have power to make law? That's out of the purview of this question. But let me correct this impression that the EFCC had been stripped of their power to prosecute. is not only a political fallacy, it indeed is hallucination by those political office holders and those their sponsors who think that that is the position of law. I'm not bothered about the existence of law. I'm only bothered about the willing power of the power that be to fight and eradicate corruption, which is a constitutional duty. But are we doing so? My answer is yes, because the anti-corruption agencies appears to be hamstrung by so many factors, including political factors, interference from those who ought not to interfere with the job of the anti-corruption agencies. And I think that nobody should mislead Nigerians and quoting Supreme Court out of context. And mark you, the Supreme Court is the symbol of justice in Nigeria. You may not like whoever may be the leaders of this, or Chief Justice of Nigeria, but that does not mean that you must rubbish the institution of the judiciary or the institution of the Supreme Court, which is like the Ashurok you have. And it is only in Nigeria that we rubbish our institutions in the name of exercise of fundamental rights. These are institutions put in place by government. Yes, there are some elements, human beings, that may not meet up to the expectations of Nigerians. But it will be a tragedy of great proportion for us to mess up the institution of judiciary.
Thank you. Now, the former speaker said at the launch of season 3 of our anti-corruption program, Corruption Story, that documents on major contracts awarded by government at all tiers and all levels should be deposited with anti-graft agencies to allow those agencies keep track of any financial record. Would this be compromising the privacy of these companies?
Well, the suggestion appears attractive and good, but as to whether or not it is within the jurisdiction and competence of the anti-corruption agencies to monitor the enforcement and execution of contract is an issue that is very difficult for me to answer in the affirmative, because it is good, it's ideal, it's fine. It does not, anti-corruption agencies have the power to call for any documents. And I think that they are doing that job and doing it well. But the end product of the efforts they put and the way some power that be interfere with the system and make the independent institution not independent, I think is the bane of the fight against corruption. And so whether you deposit it or not, those contract documents are public documents. Whether you deposit it or not, the execution of those contracts are things that ought to be seen by Nigerians. And I have always said, Nigeria is only a funny country where government advertises its achievements on the pages of newspaper and by the medium of television. But when you go to the site, you will not see it. It will surprise you to know that this level of sophisticated corruption is being elevated, so much so now that you can see corrupt judgments being delivered in favor of corrupt public and private officials. How do they do it? With the connivance of people in power, some people in power, who have vested interest in taking away money from the treasuries of this country. They organize litigation, don't defend that litigation, court that is presiding may not know, and judgment is delivered against the institutions, and in the twinkle of an eye, money is being taken out of the treasury of out of Nigerian treasuries for purposes of being sharing, because there is a vested interest. That is why in most cases now, or in some cases, not in most cases, you see that some judgments are purely RNG judgments that enabled the power, some power that be, to take money out of our treasuries for purposes of sharing it. And so that's another species of corruption under the anti-corruption government that is not being noticed and fought by the government that came to power by anti-corruption on the mattress of fighting corruption. And there are many of these. When you read some judgments, you also weep for Nigerian people, how, for instance, an order will be made for a party in the case who is a defendant to be asked to go and investigate whether the contract you are in court to enforce had commenced. My understanding of a breach of contract is that you first of all had performed your own part of obligation of the contract. You have executed the contract. Bill of there's a name for it. You are certified to have done the job correctly too before you can say that you have not been paid before you can go to court. But a situation where there is no evidence of execution of a contract, you rush to court and you secure an order of court that the court will say a defendant in an action should go and investigate whether or not that contract has been performed. Does it not sound absurd? And it involves humongous amount of money in foreign currency. And then you are saying that we are fighting corruption. So, I'm not bothered about where contract documents are deposited. I'm bothered about our character as a people. I'm bothered about our love for our nation, Nigeria. How many of us really love Nigerians that we will do things in the interest of generation yet unborn? These are questions that we need to ask. When you go to any gathering today, you will see that one of the ills that have taken over our society today is the ill of begging, executive begging. You are organizing a program, you see people who come to the place with camera, come to the place with microphone, and giving themselves all sorts of names that the press are here. So the Nigerian Union of Journalists needs to do something about that, because it is embarrassing the Nigerian public at a well-organized functions. You will see them there, able-bodied men and women camouflaging to be journalists, demanding for brand envelope. That to me is also a species of corruption. So do you need to deposit those people with ICPC to look at their character, or to EFCC? So this corruption is inbuilt, and I think that on the earlier we do something about the corruption in the DNA of most Nigerians, the better for us.
Okay, so the speaker suggested a review of the reward system in the country to give the civil servant a living wage. Can this be achieved without reducing the remuneration of political class?
You see, before I talk about the living wage of the civil servants, we should also ask, do we have productive civil servants who go to work, who earn the salary, even the little they are being paid? The government needs to look at, if we must fight corruption, and very seriously, apart from looking at the wages being paid to them, which is meager, which if you look at the per capita income of Nigeria, is nothing to write home about, which is meager. And everybody does whatever he or she wants to do in order to keep body and souls together. That has created a leeway for corruption. Just like we talk about the remuneration of judicial officers, for instance. A judicial officer is not being well remunerated. That's the same judicial officer that is being called upon to decide issues involving trillions of dollars, millions of dollars, millions of pound sterling, and his salary is not even up to $1,000. And then you are saying that such a judge, if not well trained in character, learning and comportment, and one who abhors corruption, certainly will give a corrupt judgment in favor of the highest bidder. And so, going back to the civil servant, I agree that remuneration should be upped. But when you up the remunerations of public officers, we should also see that you don't recruit 5 persons to do a job that 1 person can do. And then in another advanced country where we copy this civil service of a thing from, you don't use your hour for work for private conversation, or for truancy, or for moving from one place to the other, selling your coke, mineral, and your money to people in the offices. But in Nigeria offices today, you will see that civil servants they move from office to office, even in their offices, instead of paying detailed attention to documents and other things, in the interest of Nigerian people, they have more interest in their businesses than the work. So we must look at the remuneration, must look at the people who are recruiting into public offices, because in those days, civil servants were not politicians. They were political. But we now began to talk about so many things in Nigeria called freedom. We then have authorities that even as a civil servant, you can belong to a political party. And so the neutrality expected of a civil servant is going down in geometrical proportion, because civil servants now switch allegiance to political parties that comes to power, even when that political party and politicians are doing wrong things. In other crime, where we have institution, I always give this example of Donald Trump. If America did not have a strong democratic institution, strong military institution, strong electoral body, Donald Trump would have still remained a president of America. Will the situation in United States of America ever happen in Nigeria, where the Independent Electoral Commission will look at the face of the governor, will look at the face of the ministers, look at the face of Mr. President, and say this election is not free and fair? I had always advocated that INEC that is to be assisted, that are being assisted in most litigations in court by losers of election, always team up with those who fraudulently impose themselves on power to defend the fraudulent activities of those politicians. So I have always not regarded INEC as independent. It's independent in name, but when it comes to action, INEC, particularly in litigation, and when you issue a press statement that the election in that area is not free and fair, why then somersaulting it overnight to defend that election? Particularly in a democracy where you see people carrying helicopter and gun, parading in the air, scaring people, dead body littering all over the world, all over the places, and you are saying that is democracy, because that election cannot be said to be free, fair, and credible. You have intimidated people, and it includes undue influence to force yourself on the Nigerian people. So for me, coming back to your civil service, coming back to every of these things you are talking about, it again boils down to our personal character and attitude. How many of us are really ready to defend our principle in the face of money, mouth-watering, daggling money? Even as a civil servant, they ask you to sign the documents. You are signing because you have been promised 10%. These are things we need to do, need to look at.
Okay, so now, if we are talking about the personal character of our civil servant, and of course looking at what they do before we can talk about upping their remuneration and all the rest of them, how else do you suggest the civil servant can be handled to stop supporting the politicians from stealing from public resources? Let me give you an instance. The mismanagement of security funds at all levels of government. How do you think the politicians and the civil servants can be handled to stop supporting the politicians?
The civil servants we have did not give birth to themselves from the blue. They are products of either children of political class or children of well-to-do. Today, you know that in Nigeria, employment is not given to you on the basis of what you know or on the basis of what you can contribute, but on the basis of who you know and your connections. And you are aware, and I have written and I keep saying it, that graduates in Nigerians are not getting employment on platter of gold. Some people within the system are selling employment to Nigerians. And I have asked in my write-up, is the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria not aware? Is the Chairman of Civil Service Commission not aware? There are employment racketeering everywhere, where undergraduates pay their ways to get employed. Now, when you get to the seat of power by corrupt means, how do you then sit in that seat of power to talk about purity of that or institutions? You will also continue to corrupt your ways. That's why when you see these politicians talking about having structures here and there, and then delegates are being bought, well, how do you expect that political leader or the man who wants to be your leader to rule you well without first recouping investments? So when we are talking about this, how do you eradicate all of this from our system? Nigerians, first of all, need to agree that corruption is bad. And we all agree that corruption is bad. Two, we must agree that how corruption is to be fought without the shenanigan of this kind of arid and anachronistic legal jargon that stop the fighting of corruption. If you ask me, I will advocate an amendment of our law to engage in the fight of corruption, to use inquisitorial system rather than acquisitorial system. And I will explain what I mean. In the inquisitorial system of administration of justice, you are the one to prove your innocence, not for the state to prove your guilt beyond reasonable doubt. In acquisitorial system that we have now, under our constitution, if you are accused of stealing humongous amount of money, the constitution is saying you should keep quiet. And mark you, the level of criminal justification inherent in the brains of most Nigerians now are far more than the level of justification of equipment of the state to investigate. And so, if suddenly you are owning an estate, suddenly you become managing director and chief executives of numerosities of planes, airlines, then you are not known to be a man or a woman that have legitimate income. Then you should be called upon, pursuant to Section 7 of the EFCC Act, to explain your source of wealth. Are we prepared that when Marvelous, for instance, is being invited by EFCC to come and explain how he got money for his glasses and his cap, and Nigerians prepare to bring and leave primordial selfish interest to say that what about Mr. Okutepa that had stolen? Why are they not arresting him? See, until we drop the blame game that the arrest is political, but we are not looking at the merit of the arrest, but we are looking at the political nature of it. We have caught a thief. You say because that thief is in part A, and part A is not in power, that is why that is done. But again, you may not blame Nigeria who say so, because there are also very many thieves in part B who is in power, and they are not being investigated. So number three, the government must be very sincere and employ the Likwayu panacea to fighting of corruption. We must start from the top. Make examples of the bigger thieves who are all over in the various political parties, whether in private or in government. There are people who are pseudo government. They are not they are not the physical leader, but they are the remote control that open the television of corruption for others to view and see and arrange themselves. So we must, until we do away with this concept of sacred cows. They touch not. There are Nigerians that have held the Nigerians to their jugular. In terms of this corruption, they are the touch not Nigerians. Government must be prepared to deal with the touch not. Because after all, in the theory of government, we agreed to surrender everything to government, for government to protect us, for government to do what it needs to do, so that you and I can go to our respective rooms and sleep with two eyes closed. But today, there are people who are more powerful than government in Nigeria. Not too long ago, some persons described by people in government to be ragtag almost had overwhelmed the Nigerian Correctional Center. What is government doing about it? What is the role of our intelligence gathering? Our intelligence are gathered and given. What is the role of those who are supposed to implement those intelligence gathering? Civil servants or public officers that are corrupt. The government has this apparatus, the system to know it. Are they prepared to step on the toes of those people? Because they are not ready because of political advantage. And let me conclude on this note by saying that the most lucrative jobs in Nigeria today is politics. And nobody cares how you get there. And the moment you get there, you become a demigod. People worship you. You are worshipped as if your own blood is far better than the blood of other Nigerians that are sleeping under the bridge.
Okay, so finally, this very last question in the next 2 minutes. From what you've analyzed so far, let's look at categorically the judiciary. Of course, the anti-graft agencies, some of them have said that yes, they've gotten some evidences, and then there are court litigations against those that they might have caught, in concert with corruption and all the rest of them. But because of the delay in justice administration, there are a lot of judgments that have yet to be given. So what do you think? And of course, we have laws against corruption in Nigeria, and you've always advocated that there is no issue with our law. It's just the will, the will to carry out those laws and implement them to its fullest. So what do you think the judiciary ought to do so that most of these judgments are given, and of course people
see, let's not use judiciary as scapegoat. We operate a system that is acquisitorial. The state must first of all invest heavily in scientific investigation. When you have watertight evidence, and you must have watertight evidence before you can arraign a person in court. 2, we must reduce the number of counts we will have. Sometimes you go to court, you see that the reading of the counts may take 2 days. We must reduce it. 3, before you can blame the judiciary must also be well founded. Number 4, we must also look at the character of both the prosecuting agency and the defending agencies. I mean the legal practitioners involved. In Nigeria, there are no boundaries for lawyer. Everyone travel to every boundaries he or she likes, because even though there are boundaries in law of what you are not supposed to do as a lawyer, there are no immediate consequences. So much so that those who are not reasonably fit to be a member of the noble profession will in some cases even lead the profession in the most embarrassing manner. And so, because there are no consequences in Nigeria, and we are used to abnormalities as normal, then nothing seems to work well. Otherwise, in a well-defined society, there are certain applications that lawyers cannot make. Once you make such application that is aimed at delaying the case or frustrating the trial, you are shown the way out by the withdrawal of your license. But how many lawyers have had their license withdrawn on the basis of the frivolities of applications they file to stall proceedings until the Administration of Criminal Justice Act came and limiting the number of adjournment. Even that is being obeyed in breach in the name of right to fair hearing. I believe that right to fair hearing is good, but if we live in utopian concept of right to fair hearing, the sanctity and the integrity and the economic development of Nigeria will be the one to suffer shipwreck. Therefore, there must be a boundary for the prosecuting agency, for the defending attorney, and for the investigating agency, and for the presiding judges that handle corruption cases. Once we have that boundaries, and we now know that the boundary are being crossed and there are consequences, we sit up. That is why, again, I prescribe the panel cell of Linkwayu. Let there be no sacred cows. Indeed, in one of the books that I read of Linkwayu, he said we did not compromise. Even those who were close to him were dealt with. But in Nigeria, your closeness to power that be is a license for more atrocities to be committed. And that's why we are where we are.
Well, that's it on our package on the conversation. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon.